before we get into Matt Rule, so Robin figured out. I joked that George Clooney would play Matt Rule in the movie. Actually, Robin's got the real character. Who is the character?
Yeah, so if I'm casting this biopic of Matt Rule, I'm going with Mark Ruffalo.
Nailed it.
And Megan, if you have a picture of him, you can pop him up there. If not, there he is.
Oh my God,
Matt Rule.
There's Matt Rule.
Put him in a Husker pullover, and you got yourself Nebraska's head football coach.
Robin, the casting director, Robin.
I think Rule would probably still prefer Clooney to play him.
Well, you know,
I would. I mean, it'd be quite a coup. I mean, it's like in the Blind Side movie, the real dad. They had Tim McGraw play him, and he looked nothing like Tim McGraw. And the dad's like, "Yeah, I loved having Tim McGraw play my role in the movie."
That'd be great.
Sandra Bullock. I mean, you have to have it like realistic, right? Yes. Anyway, perfect.
All right. Well, I want to get back into.
Look at Ruffalo. What was he in?
I mean, he's been in a bunch of stuff. Hulk.
Oh, he was the Hulk.
Yeah, so he's in all the Avengers, X-Men, not X-Men, Hulk.
We already know who plays
Marvel.
Robin's role.
Who?
The guy from Superbad.
Not even anymore. When I had my hair cut differently, he's talking about what's his name, the skinny kid from
And the guy from
Superbad.
Social Network.
Oh, I can't think of his name.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's Robin's
don't have it.
movie. I don't have one.
Well, let's move.
There's only one of me.
Before we get in trouble.
But all right, let's get into Matt Rule. We heard from him Saturday. A lot of things. One thing that really jumped out to me as he builds this roster, builds this team, is the 57-man roster. They can have 105 players, but there's very much an NFL mindset of how you build this thing, with starting with your top 57. And my interpretation is, if you're in that 57, you are the guys that are going to get a bigger piece, if not the biggest piece, of the rev share dollars. And I think as you recruit now high school players, that's the challenge you have to do. Is like, all right, what high school guy are we going to bring in that could be in the 57? Which guys maybe aren't in the 57 that could get into that number? And that is the new recruiting we're working with now.
Now the natural question is, would we ever get that 57? The media, would he ever put out a depth chart that would say?
I think the real depth chart itself is probably pretty close to the 57.
Okay. That's probably the answer. You could probably determine it.
He said 3 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Which is, yeah.
I'd imagine it's 3 running backs.
This is where the NFL model and his NFL rules, NFL experience really comes in handy. When he starts to talk about this sort of stuff, I mean, it's clear that he's using it. Well, he says this is the way it's done in the NFL, with some tweaks.
And how you pay guys is almost like how you've done in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that background really helps.
You prioritize certain positions that are valued: quarterback, edge rusher, tackle.
Yeah,
I mean, those positions are going to make a lot of money.
Yep.
And then players like Dane Key, you sign as a priority free agent. Look, Dane Key right now, if he had 800 and some yards receiving this year, his total stat number would be the most receiving yards ever at Nebraska.
Total stat.
Like right now, he comes in like 6th or 7th all time at Nebraska. If you just took what he did at Kentucky.
Big time receiver. I mean, it would be a shocking development if he wasn't in the starting lineup. Right?
No.
Brought him in to be probably your number one target.
He's got almost 2,000 career yards receiving.
Number one target. So yeah, the 57, and then there's a second group, a second 57.
Second 53.
50.
But the
53.
bottom 10, I think, is where there's going to be a lot more flexibility. Like you are going to have a Roman Mangini in there.
He said Roman Mangini will make the roster.
Like players that might surprise the fan base because they're not necessarily big name guys, but there are culture guys that you want in there.
Yeah, Roman Mangini. I have very limited familiarity with Roman Mangini, except Rule mentions him. If he has 5 press conferences, he'll mention him in 2 of them.
And if you notice, like those pregame scrums where Rule will like just pick guys out, he always picks Roman Mangini.
Sean, what do you know about Roman Mangini?
Just a tough walk-on wide receiver.
From Desert Ridge High School in Mesa, Arizona.
Does his job. They like his attitude. And look, you have to find quality walk-ons in this program. And I think there are plenty. And that will be the challenge. Like, how do you manage this roster to make sure you have about 10 of those players every year still?
The
thing is, they unfortunately have to be more than just culture guys. Like, they got to be able to help you if you're carrying them on your roster. And Roman Mangini played a lot of special teams. And so That's got to be the balance of finding guys that make your team better, that make your practices better, but they can also help you on game day, because you just can't carry extra weight anymore with this 105 model.
Yeah, and it's interesting. How much extra weight was there? How many guys were around that really couldn't compete?
I think you would take more walk-on freshman players than you normally would, because you could get away with it. Now there aren't any walk-on freshmen this year. None. And they had to turn away on some pretty good kids. Like, I'll give you one, Ike Ackerman at Omaha Central. Our people at On3 love him. In fact, I didn't know this, but they rank him as a 4-star, and he's going to Ohio, but he's a 6'4", 240-pound edge defensive end player, multiple state champion in the shot put and discus, a 6'4" high jumper, led the state of Nebraska in Class A in quarterback sacks, and he's a great basketball player at Omaha Central.
Can't help Nebraska?
And they didn't have a spot for a guy like this. Well, I talked to one of our ratings guys this morning about this, because I'm like, hey, I wanted to verify, like, this wasn't like done by mistake. They rated him as a 4-star, and they said, we're floored that teams do not evaluate senior years anymore. This is a 6'4" high jumper, a state champion discus shot put thrower, led Nebraska in sacks, and he's a starter.
Nebraska,
and he's a starter on a great basketball team.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, and so a guy like this didn't get to go to Nebraska.
Was he getting Power 4
None.
offers?
He had North Dakota State, Kent State, Northwest Missouri State. He had some of those offers, but then Ohio came in on him late because they had a coaching change.
Jeez.
But
do you think this is going to be the new model in a lot of cases, where you got a guy that's like would be good enough to be a developmental piece on a previous unlimited roster number, but now he kind of has to go the stepping stone route to Ohio, and then maybe
like basketball,
in a year or two.
Robin.
Yeah, it's been that way in basketball for a while, but now I think you're starting to see that become more and more prevalent in football as well with these roster
where you go
limits.
take him from Ohio.
Yeah.
And I saw him actually play basketball, Robin, that Anderson kid from Pius, that's in North Dakota State.
Yeah, Trace Anderson.
Trace Anderson. He locked him up in the district finals. I mean, just manhandled him with his physicality and athletic ability.
Big kid.
So On3's thought is like, hey, this is a guy that we'll look smart at, because if he has a year or two at Ohio, he'll be making $1 million somewhere.
Jeez. Because he's an edge guy.
Yep.
He's a defensive lineman edge, yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, how many guys at his size, at 6'4", 230, do you know that high jump 6'4"?
Virtually none. I mean, that's an elite athlete.
Yeah.
That's an elite
But
athlete.
the issue with recruiting now, I think we deal with, is you have to select so early. Like, you're almost
early junior.
you have to look at the junior year, but the sophomore year. And if you don't get identified then, it's hard.
Wow.
And how many you guys played high school sports? How many guys do you know that made massive jumps from their junior to senior? A lot.
Most of them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it usually is in life.
Right. I mean, guys that get offered as sophomores or start. Yeah. I mean, it's changed so much. I don't even know what to say. The other thing that Rule talked about, it was interesting in the press conference on Saturday, his press conference. He wasn't asked about Dana Holgorsen or any Dana Holgorsen related questions at all. It was the last or second to last question in a 31-minute press conference when he finally was asked about Dylan Raiola. And I was going to. Reporter Sam from the World Herald, he asked it. I was going to ask the question, and then Sam did. And Matt had a very sort of an interesting answer about Raiola. The question was how much growth is needed before Raiola makes it his team. And Rule had a great answer. He said before he can make it his team, I think he has to make it his offense. Before he makes it his offense, I think he has to make it his receiving core. So what that means is he's got to get those guys, those receivers going in these, in throwing sessions, off-season throwing sessions, and get them all there. Rule had that quote. Again, I mean, it's very interesting what he said. He said Dylan has to get the receivers there every day. Year one, I'd asked him about workouts, and 5 receivers showed up. Rule said that's not leadership. That's trying to be a leader. Leadership is when you get everybody there, and I think he'll do a great job with that.
And what did we see on Saturday?
What'd you see, Sean?
90 guys working out on Saturday, where the last 2 years they didn't have that luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Sims at this time 2 years ago did not have the clout to organize that.
No, not really.
A year ago, Heiner Carberg wasn't really it was kind of hard to say he was the starting quarterback.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And Dylan was a freshman who hadn't done anything.
And then Dylan came in December.
Mm-hmm.
And Dylan wanted, I think it was maybe a little frustrating time because he wanted to get everybody together. But these are early morning workouts. And not all those receivers just say, okay, I'm ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
No, you get resistance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Rule's saying. When you get resistance, you still got to make it work. That's being a leader because you're going to get resistance. Not every kid's going to want to get up at 7:00. Some are going to text you, say, nah, they'll give you the NAH or whatever. Well, you got to get them there.
NAH.
You know what I've seen the grandkids do that. Nah,
nah,
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.